Hey guys, it's Mathel here again, and today I'm going to just talk a bit about the crit FaceBreaker character and where it ended up, and basically just what I feel about the character in total. I'm just running through a Olmec Sanctum here real quick. In essence, the character becomes being kind of a highlight reel of just huge, explosive one-shots on packs, bosses, you name it. It ends up just being a good feeling highlight reel. You get a lot of satisfying kills, and it's actually a pretty stable build in the long run where you don't die very often, surprisingly, considering we are running an Abyssus. You don't really take too much damage unless you get into some sort of awkward situations. But multi-strike for the most part takes care of that. So you would think you don't really need multi-strike. Because you're going for the one punch sort of thing. And you're right, you don't necessarily need multi-strike, but multi-strike really fills out a lot of the gaps in the build where you might miss a few monsters and just have some targeting issues, because that's usually when you die, if you don't hit something quite immediately. So I'm just going to talk my way through an Atziri run here as well, and that'll be the video and the conclusion of Crit FaceBreakers. So Crit FaceBreakers for Atziri itself is actually pretty solid. Now, build like this is going to be really strong and solid up until it gets to stages where you can't really one-shot things or can't kill things immediately. Now, that threshold certainly is not normal at Atziri. It will probably fail spectacularly at something like Uber Atziri though, because you won't be killing things instantly. Trash, potentially, you get away with, but bosses, they just won't die fast enough, and you'll be forced to actually play the game against them, which is the downfall. When you have to play the game against Atziri and against the trio, for example, it's just going to be too much for a character like this. You have to be able to kill them during your flasks, so 10 to 15 seconds worth, and your Val skills, and you also the more health something has, the more you have to rely on getting good crits. And the build itself in total, with power charges, has about 45% crit, but power charges aren't always up, for example, and 45% crit just isn't consistent enough for the really tougher, larger stuff. Now for bosses like this, or bosses in general, I am subbing out melee splash with added fire and increased area with crit strikes. So it does give you some much better single target. Just plain self buff, I'm up to about 200k on the infernal blow. And then with flasks up, with Val skill, with everything up, I'm at something like 400k, maybe even 500 on infernal blow single target. So as long as you crit, you are pretty much annihilating anything in the game bar Uber Atziri or maybe Malachi from Core, because those things just have too much health to really die to the one-shots. But something as simple as Atziri, the build just absolutely crushes. You get all of your damage from Abyssus and FaceBreakers. So the two staple items in the build will go for much less than an Exalt in conjunction, combined together. As you can see here, I dive in. When you can really notice the crits. Whenever you get the crits, things just die almost immediately. So anyway, the Abyssus plus FaceBreaker combo is really what gives you the damage for the build. In my entire build, I have, let's just say, about 200k standing around for single target buffed, unbuffed DPS. Taking off Abyssus drops me to 40k. So it is quite literally 5 times my DPS by putting it on. If you try and make this build with a Bringer Rain, or without an Abyssus somehow, you're losing out on essentially the entire build's damage. So the real point of a build like this is to shove an Abyssus somewhere into your build and make it viable. If you feel like you can't make it viable in your build, if you feel like it's just going to make it too squishy, then it's just not worth playing the build. You have to revolve your entire build around the Abyssus to make the build worth running. That's my opinion anyway. Because the flat fizz and the crit multi, they're just too huge to pass up. You have to try and play around them, I feel. So Atziri itself is pretty comfortable as well, as long as we get the crits and avoid taking too much damage. As you can see, whenever you don't get some crits, she's just going to stand there laughing at you. When the crits come, it's really, really good, and you will instantly kill the ads and instantly kill her split phase ads. Now ultimately, if you want to take this build to the next level for things like Atziri or Uber Atziri, you are looking at replacing Infernal Blow with Cyclone. It's not just the drawback of this build that I'm talking about when facing higher life targets and running out of more or less DPS and then having to face them by actually playing the game. It's pretty much any build, or largely melee, that aren't Cyclone. Because when you run out of DPS, it's just you versus the boss at that point, one-on-one, and you have to stand there, you have to take lots of damage, and you have to try and deal lots of damage while avoiding it. Whereas Cyclone doesn't really give a fuck. Cyclone just spins around, it's stun immune, it's defensive as shit because you're dodging at the same time as doing damage. That's why Cyclone will be able to take the build to the next level if you want it to. On top of that, it hits so fast and so frequently that your low crit chance doesn't seem to matter as much. So if you really wanted to take this build to Uber Atziri, you'd probably be looking at speccing more into Cyclone. That would take a few little respec points though, and probably running a Quicksilver, certain other things. But it's just got a small radius and just doesn't feel as good for the long run. I think if you're going to play this build, make it a map build and just go out there and explode monsters. If you want to do Uber Atziri, probably pick up something like Voltaxic. To conclude, I think it's well worth a shot if you're just into some serious mapping and pretty explosions. I do recommend it, and I hope you guys have fun trying it out.